Amidst the bustling streets and quiet homes of Wichita, a sinister presence cast long shadows over the city from 1974 to 1991. Known only by his chilling pseudonym BTK, bind, torture, kill, the BTK killer terrorized residents with a relentless series of murders that left victims bound and strangled in their own living spaces. Each crime was meticulously orchestrated, often involving stolen personal items as macabre trophies. The killer's taunting letters to the police and media added an eerie layer of anticipation to his reign of fear. In 1979, BTK vanished without a trace, leaving behind a cold case that baffled investigators for years. Despite extensive efforts, no leads materialized, turning the unsolved murders into a haunting legend. Then in 2004, after a 13-year hiatus, BTK reemerged with cryptic letters hinting at future crimes. The cat-and-mouse game between killer and law enforcement intensified. On February 18, 2005, the jig was up. In a dramatic turn of events, the BTK killer, Dennis Rader, was identified through items he had sent to police. Within months, Rader pleaded guilty in court, admitting to his crimes without much remorse. His twisted journey from childhood to the cold, calculated murderer he became remains a chilling testament to the dark depths of human depravity. Amidst the bustling streets and quiet homes of Wichita, a sinister presence cast long shadows over the city from 1974 to 1991. The era was marked by a sense of normalcy that belied the lurking menace within the community. Wichita, known for its Midwestern charm and cultural diversity, was a place where families thrived in modest homes and children played unsupervised on sidewalks. Yet, behind closed doors, terror reigned. Dennis Lynn Rader, later known as the BTK Killer, grew up in this environment, the oldest of 4 sons in Pittsburgh, Kansas. His parents were both employed outside the home, leaving their children to fend for themselves. This neglect fostered a sense of isolation and dissatisfaction that would later manifest in his twisted fantasies. Rader's early life was marked by peculiar interests: novels, comic books, fishing, and scouting clubs. However, beneath this facade lay a darker side: sadistic sexual fantasies involving the torture of women and acts of zoosadism, where he would torture small animals. His psychological landscape was a labyrinth of desires and fears, one that would eventually lead him to commit unspeakable crimes. In his youth, Rader harbored a fascination with cross-dressing and voyeurism, often spying on female neighbors in women's clothing while stealing their underwear as souvenirs. He also engaged in autoerotic asphyxiation, binding himself to experience sensations that would later become the tools of terror for his victims. As he matured into adulthood, Rader's experiences in the military only seemed to exacerbate his inner turmoil. His time in the United States Air Force taught him about sex and provided a structured environment that he later sought to control through his own twisted means. Yet upon returning to Wichita, the city's quiet anonymity provided the perfect backdrop for his sinister plans to unfold. The social context of the 1970s in Wichita was one of suburban tranquility. The era saw the rise of consumer culture and a growing sense of safety, but it also harbored a darkness that would be unleashed by Rader's BTK moniker. His victims were typically women found in their own homes, bound and subjected to his brutal fantasies. The world of Wichita remained unaware of the horrors being committed within its borders until the killer's chilling letters began to surface, sending ripples of fear through the community. In the heart of Wichita, on October 23, 1974, the first BTK crime sent a chill through the community. The victim was Susan Levy, a 26-year-old mother, and her 8-year-old daughter, Amy Lynn. Bound and gagged with duct tape, Susan's body was found near her vehicle in the parking lot of a shopping center. Her daughter, Amy Lynn, was unharmed but terrified, providing police with a crucial lead. The next day, October 24, the BTK killer struck again. This time, his target was Shirley Vian, a 35-year-old widow. Her body was discovered in her home, bound and gagged, with ligature marks around her neck indicating manual strangulation. A plastic bag was found stuffed in her mouth, confirming one of BTK's signature methods. In the following weeks, more victims emerged, each crime more gruesome than the last. On December 30, 1974, Marilee May Hilliard, a 25-year-old woman, was abducted from her home and found dead in the woods near Park City on January 8, 1975. Her body bore signs of torture, including ligature marks and blunt force trauma. The BTK case became an obsession for law enforcement. In May 1976, Rader sent his first letter to the Wichita Eagle, claiming responsibility for the murders of Shirley Vian and Marilee May Hilliard. The letters detailed the crimes with chilling precision and included a photograph of a mutilated animal, further fueling suspicion. Despite an exhaustive investigation, progress remained elusive. In 1979, BTK's activity ceased entirely, leaving behind a case that grew ever more notorious. Over a decade passed without any new murders or taunting letters. The city of Wichita lived in fear and anticipation. The killer seemingly vanished into thin air. In February 2004, after a 13-year hiatus, BTK again reached out to law enforcement through mail. This time, he sent a letter with a cryptic message: "I'm back. I'm not going away for a long, long time." The letters contained personal details and information that only Rader could have known, details that pointed directly to him. On February 18, 2005, the hunt for BTK was reignited when investigators traced the source of the letter to a local community college. Forensic analysts matched handwriting samples with Dennis Rader's signature. On March 3, 2005, Rader was arrested at his home in Park City, Kansas. The case that had haunted Wichita for decades finally came to an end. Dennis Rader, known as BTK, faced justice and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms on July 14, 2005. The shadow cast by the killer was lifted, but the memories of his victims remained etched into the city's collective consciousness. In the heart of Wichita, on October 23, 1974, the first BTK crime sent a chill through the community. The victim was Sharon Jo Schmidt, a 26-year-old woman found bound and strangled in her home. Her case remained unsolved for years, as authorities struggled to connect it with subsequent murders. The early years of the investigation were marked by frustration. In 1975, the body of Nancy Fox was discovered, also bound and strangled. Then, in December 1980, the bodies of Marlene Brady and Rebecca Schieffer were found. Both had been suffocated with plastic bags. Despite these gruesome discoveries, significant leads remained elusive. In 1979, BTK suddenly went quiet. This lull led to a period where the case was largely forgotten until the mid-1980s, when Rader began sending taunting letters to local newspapers and law enforcement agencies. These letters detailed his crimes with chilling accuracy, but no concrete evidence linked him to the cases. Key suspects were identified based on their proximity to the victims or their access to Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 BTK, Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, 2004, Chinese letter. RADER, Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, RADER, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, 2005, Chinese letter to Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter, Chinese letter. RADER, Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, Chinese letter. BTK, Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Chinese letter, 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 Chinese letter. Theories about who committed the notorious BTK killings in Wichita and Park City, Kansas, abounded during the decades following the crimes. One of the earliest theories centered around John Rader, Dennis's father. Given their close relationship, Dennis was said to idolize his father. A psychological profile suggested that John might have passed on a violent predisposition to his son. However, evidence ultimately proved insufficient to implicate him. Another prominent theory revolved around individuals with known criminal records or unstable backgrounds. Suspects ranged from disturbed individuals to local serial killers who had been previously under suspicion but never caught. These theories often cited signs of mental instability within the suspects, aligning with Rader's own reported history of acting out sexual fantasies and animal cruelty as a youth. Despite numerous leads, the case remained unsolved for over 2 decades until evidence began to emerge in 2004. Items sent through the mail by BTK hinted at an active serial killer still operating. Law enforcement closely examined records from the local community and military service files, eventually focusing on Dennis Rader due to his known presence in the area during the relevant timeframe. However, it wasn't until 2005 that DNA evidence conclusively linked Rader to the crimes. His arrest was based on meticulous forensic analysis of items seized from his home, including a photograph of himself wearing a BTK mask and other personal effects stolen from victims. Despite these strong leads, legal proceedings were swift due to the overwhelming evidence. The case against Dennis Rader remained unmarred by significant contradictions. However, the complexity of human behavior in cases like this often leaves lingering questions about motives and methods that may never be fully answered. Theories persist regarding his psychological state at the time of the murders, whether he acted alone or with others, and even why he stopped after 17 years. Yet, one fact remains unchallenged. Dennis Rader was BTK, and his crimes terrorized a generation. In the quietude that now blankets Wichita, Dennis Rader remains incarcerated at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas. Since his arrest and conviction in 2005, no new confessions or significant witnesses have emerged to alter the known narrative of BTK's crimes. The case stands as one of meticulous planning and eerie silence, with the killer's modus operandi remaining largely unchanged from his first murder until his capture. The cold case units of Kansas law enforcement continue to review BTK-related evidence and materials found in Rader's possession, including items stolen from victims that provided key DNA evidence. However, the most significant developments have been retrospective, confirming the identities of additional victims through scientific advancements rather than new leads or confessions. Rader's motivations remain shrouded in mystery. His letters to the police and media outlets continue to be a chilling testament to his psychological state during the BTK era. Despite extensive investigations, many details surrounding his early life and possible triggers for his brutal behavior have yet to be fully resolved. The case remains a haunting reminder of the darkest aspects of human psychology, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate and terrify. The true nature of Rader's psychological profile, the extent of his sadistic tendencies, and any potential underlying factors contributing to his crimes remain permanently unknown, adding an air of mystery to this enduring chapter in criminal history. The BTK case left an indelible mark on American criminal history, challenging law enforcement protocols and public perceptions of safety in their own neighborhoods. It pushed forensic science to new frontiers, including DNA analysis, which finally brought closure to victims' families decades after their losses. Yet one question remains unanswered. What drove Dennis Rader to remain silent for over 2 decades before his arrest? The psychological complexities that fueled his crimes continue to puzzle investigators and criminologists alike. If this case gripped you, there are dozens more waiting in the criminal archive. Every week, we uncover new stories that history tried to forget. Subscribe now and never miss a case. The truth is out there, and we will find it together.